Agribition, I'd like to welcome you today to this interview slash Q&A with my friend Glenda. She raises alpacas in southern Saskatchewan, and she is with us to answer any and all questions that you may have about these animals. I would like to remind you guys to keep your microphones muted, and any questions that you have, you can type them in the chat function of the Zoom call. I will ask them to her as they come in, and I hope you guys have a really good time listening to her speak. I'll let her give a quick intro about herself and her operation, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Kaylee. Where I raise alpacas in Osage, which is about 45 minutes south of Regina. And on my farm I have 30. So alpacas are been domesticated for about 6,000 years, and what we do, and they're raised strictly for their fiber. So their fiber gets shorn once a year, and we turn it into really cool things. We can make mitts and toques and scarves and all kinds of clothing. I can't remember. I've lost my train of thought.
So do you want to tell us a bit about the different types of alpacas?
Okay, for sure. So there's two types of alpacas. There's Wakayas, and they're the ones that get really big and fluffy in the spring, and they look like teddy bears, which this guy is. And then there's Surreys that have like long locks, and their fiber just drapes. They're really kind of a really cool animal to look at.
And what did you say this fellow's name is?
I think his name is Jimmy, I think. He's not mine, so I don't know.
But he's very handsome.
He's very handsome.
Okay, so do alpacas come in different colors then?
Yeah, right, yeah. So alpacas, when we register them, they come in 22 natural colors, ranging from white. They have white, light, fawn, brown, black, gray, and then multis. So the multis are kind of like an Appaloosa. So they'll have like spots or patches or two different colors on them.
Great. And can you just talk about the fiber of an alpaca versus maybe the wool that a sheep has?
Okay, so the fiber from the alpaca is really kind of special. So it's a hollow fiber. So that means that each little piece of fiber, each little piece of hair that comes off them is hollow, which creates a really cool insulating factor, and so, which makes it about 4 to 5 times warmer than sheep's wool. But what's else is really cool about alpaca, it's considered hypoallergenic, which means that people that are allergic to wools or different other fibers generally can wear alpaca because it does. So what the difference between the alpaca and the wool is the lanolin. The lanolin is the wool, which is what people are allergic to most.
Yeah. And alpacas don't have that.
Alpacas do not have the lanolin.
It's better for people with sensitive skin. It's a better alternative.
Right.
Awesome. Kate, can you tell us a little bit about what they eat? Is it similar to like a cow, or what does their diet consist of?
Sure. So they eat predominantly grass, hay. I feed a little bit alfalfa. We can also buy a special vitamin. It's a little ration that kind of bumps their vitamins and minerals up. So we feed that, and then I usually feed a little bit of grain on top of that.
Okay, now this might be a bit of a silly question, but I'm genuinely curious. So when it comes to showtime, when you're on the show circuit, like at Agribition per se, when you're getting them ready to show, like, do you put anything in their coat to condition it?
No, they're shown completely natural, because what happens is when we're showing the alpacas, they're judged 60% on their fiber and 40% on the conformation. So we don't brush them, we don't add anything, because it can take away the characteristics that we're looking for in their fleece. The only thing we might do is we trim under the tail, clean them up a little bit, trim their top knots so they look pretty, and make sure their toes and teeth are trimmed.
Okay, and then do you want to touch on, since you're an expert, will you touch on a year in the life of someone who raises alpacas? So what happens in the different seasons, in winter, spring, summer, and fall?
Okay, so I'll start with, usually in the spring, between May and July is when we have our babies, some August. And then when we have the babies, they grow until the next spring. And then in the spring, between mid-April to mid-June, we shear the alpacas, so they get shorn once a year. And at shearing time, I also do a lot of my vaccinations, any vitamin shots, if they need their teeth trimmed, it's a major herd health day also. And then from there, so then after shearing, his babies, the crias usually start showing up. So a baby alpaca's name is called a cria. And then in the fall, we start doing some fall maintenance. I usually check for deworming. If they need to be wormed, run them through dewormer. There again, I check toenails again, make sure everything's good for winter. And then I start just preparing them for winter. And then in the winter, they just get to hang out in the barn, in the pen, and eat lots of good hay and get to do alpaca things. And then come spring again, we start the show season where we get them all registered up and start showing them.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you touched on having babies.
Right.
So first of all, how long is an alpaca female pregnant for?
So they're pregnant, average is 345 days. So that's about 11 and a half months. So, and then some will go longer, and I've seen some go to the year and over. They can be pregnant for a long time.
That is a long time. And when they give birth, what's it called? I know there's a special term for alpacas.
It is. It's really cool. It's called unpacking. So when an alpaca is giving birth, it's called unpacking. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's so darling. Okay, and I know you briefly said that a baby alpaca is called a cria, right?
Yes.
Now, is there different names for male and female?
So a male alpaca is called a macho, and a female alpaca is called a hembra.
All right, good to know. Now, I know a major question that you guys get as alpaca owners is if they can bite or spit.
So alpacas can't bite because they only have lower teeth. So they have a really tough dental pad that they use to chew their food. But what they do is they actually use their lips to grab the little pieces of grass. So their top lips actually act kind of like their top teeth, but they can't bite. But they can spit. All camelids spit. So they actually are a cousin to the camel, which is kind of cool. And they're also a cousin to the llama. And then there's guanacos and vicunas that are also in that camelid family.
All right, we're going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to open up the chat for questions, and each question that the classes ask is worth 1 point. Whoever reaches 5 points first wins a prize. So let's see those questions come through the chat while we look at our gorgeous alpaca Jimmy there. Look how handsome he is. I would love to see some questions come through for our model animal there. The questions are rolling in. Look at that. Okay, what is the average weight of an alpaca?
So the average weight of a female is about 125 to 140 pounds, and an average male is about 130 to 160 pounds.
Okay.
Great question.
How many babies can an alpaca have at one time? Do they have twins or multiples?
So usually it's one. But I've heard of a few, like there's actually been, I know people that have had twins. And there was actually a friend of mine had twins this year, which is really unusual for alpacas.
Okay, another question here. Are all of the babies that are unpacked or born, are they the same color, or like do they grow into their coat like a horse?
No, they're born the color that they're gonna be. Some animals will change slightly as they grow, but generally they're the color that they're going to be.
Okay, now we have a question regarding their feet and their toenails. Is it like humans where you could cut their toenails too short and they could get sensitive or bleed?
They will, yeah, if you cut, it's just like a dog's toenail, like a dog's claw, and they have a quick in there, so we got to make sure we cut them just right so they don't bleed. Yep.
There's another question. Can we just go over how many times a year they're shorn? Is it once a year?
Just once a year in the spring.
Okay. Are there different age classes when you show them, or how old are they when you generally take them to their first show?
So we can't show an alpaca until they're 6 months old. So they have to be 6 months old to go to the show. So there's juvenile class, which is the 6 month. There's yearlings, which is the 1 to 2 year olds, is the 2-year-old. And then there's the mature. So normally in the 2-year-old class, you don't see many females because they get bred at 2 usually. So then we don't like to show pregnant females. So yeah.
All right, and I know we were talking earlier just about general maintenance of an alpaca. So you mentioned that they get their toenails trimmed, they get their teeth checked. Do you have to brush their teeth? Is that something that you do as an owner?
No, we don't brush their teeth.
Okay, what is the lifespan of a typical alpaca?
So about 18 to 23, 24 years. Yeah.
24 years. That's amazing. There is a question about spitting. This class heard that they can spit when they get really upset. Is it true? And does it hurt when they spit on you?
Yes, they spit. So if they're really upset or mad or they feel threatened, they spit. Does it hurt? No, but it stinks really bad.
I believe it. Now, generally, are males or females bigger? Is it like typical other species? Are the males usually the bigger ones, or it depends?
Yes, usually the males are a bit bigger, but there's so many. The size of alpacas can range from average is there's a big gap in average. So generally the males are bigger, they're a little wider in the chest and a little bit bigger boned than the females, but it can be the other way around too.
It's a new question, I haven't seen this one yet. What is the difference between an alpaca and a llama?
Okay, good question. So the biggest thing is size. So this is a full-grown male alpaca on the smaller side of average. And a llama is a lot bigger, like 100 or 200 pounds bigger than this guy would be. They also have a bit of a longer face, so you can tell by their face. The biggest thing that sets off a llama from an alpaca is their ears. So llamas have really banana-shaped, funky, curved ears, where alpacas are kind of more of you can see on this guy, they're more spear-shaped, so they stand up a little, they're just a bit different shape. There's some other subtle differences too, but mostly size, the head shape, and the ears is how you're going to differentiate the alpaca from the llama.
Okay, good question, good question. When a cria is born, what's the average weight of a newborn?
Anywhere from about 10 pounds to 18 pounds.
So quite tiny. Like I know with cows, they're usually 60 to 100.
And they're all legs and neck.
Okay, are alpacas a herd animal? Do they usually stay in packs?
They are. So they like to be with buddies. They like to be with their friends. So it's best to have a minimum of 2 alpacas to socialize. And ideally, you don't want to mix the boys with the girls.
Like having a buddy around. All right, we have a question. This is a good one. Do people or could you ride an alpaca like a horse?
No, you cannot ride an alpaca. They just don't have the strength to carry anything. So when I mentioned before, the biggest thing between the alpacas and the llamas is the size. So they just can't, they can only carry about maybe 20 pounds. You can't ride them, no.
Yeah, they're probably under all that coat, they're probably pretty fair.
There's not a lot of animal under these coats.
No. Okay, if you let an alpaca grow out its coat forever, how long would the fur get? Would it just keep growing and growing and growing?
Yes, it would grow. It's just really not nice to do that because it gets so hot. Could you imagine wearing your wool sweater when it's 40 above, in the summer when it's really hot? So as part of husbandry and actually being a responsible owner and looking after the alpacas, it's really important that we shear them once a year so they don't get sores.
That once that fur or the coat grows, it probably gets matted if you leave it, and that's never good. Okay, so on your operation, do you need to be concerned about predators that are around?
Yes. Alpacas are not a guard animal at all. So at my farm, I have two of the big dogs. Like I have a couple of the livestock guardian dogs that help keep my alpacas safe.
Some operations do have those like livestock guardian dogs where they just bond right with the herd and the dogs just become one of them. Okay, are alpacas generally a smart animal in your opinion, or what's your take on that?
I think so. Ask my husband might have a different answer, but no, they're very curious. They're very inquisitive. They tend to know what's going on, and they get, like mine at home, like if they see me out in the yard, they run to the gates because they know they're going to get fed. So yeah, they can develop a routine, and they get to know who likes them and who doesn't, and they know who.
Now you're gonna love this question because I know you're passionate about this. What do you do when the fiber, like when they're shorn? What happens from the time that it comes off to like when the finished product per se?
So once we shear it, we take the fleece. When we shear them off, so there's the neck. So when we're shearing them, we're looking for the blanket, which is this big area back here that covers it, and that's what our prime fleece is, and that's what we like to do, like make things with. And from there, we send it. Either we sell it to. There's a couple places in Canada that we can sell our raw fleece to, or I send it to a mill and get yarn made, and then from that yarn, I like to knit and crochet, so I can make things. Kaylee, do you want to bring me that bag, and I'll show you some stuff that. There we go. So I brought with me today a few things. So this would be a yarn that I make. This is made with alpaca. And from this yarn, and there's different kinds of yarn that you can get made in different weights and colors and all kinds of things because we can dye it, right? So then from that yarn, like we make toques. Oh, shoot. And then we have our socks. You don't like the socks, Jimmy? And then we can make mitts. So these are made by machine, but it still goes through the same process. So the yarn is just spun really, really fine to go through the machine. And then the other thing that's really nice, well, it's kind of cool, but in South America, like in Peru, where the alpacas are native to, they have like big wild herds. So what'll happen is when an animal dies, of natural causes, of course, they can harvest the fiber, or they harvest the hides, and then they tan them, and they can actually make teddy bears. So this bear came all the way from Peru, and he was handmade down there. So it's kind of a special little thing. But so this is kind of a way to have an alpaca without actually having an alpaca. So that's just a few things that we make out of the alpaca. You can make felt, so anything that you would use do a yarn craft with, that you would use wool. So felting, needle felting, crocheting, knitting, weaving, you can do with alpaca.
Okay, what, in your opinion, I guess, is an alpaca's greatest sense? Is it their vision? Is it their sense of smell? Are they a typically fast animal? Is it just that they're chill, they're pretty easygoing, or like? They're
generally pretty chill, but their ears are always going. So I would think they're between their hearing and their eyesight. Like if you watch him, his ears are always going. He's checking. They're really curious. They're sniffing. They're mostly, I think, it's their hearing. Is what I would think in my opinion.
All right, there's a question. Again, you said you have 30 alpacas, right? 30, okay. Now, how much does an alpaca poop, and how fast can they run?
Oh gosh, how much do they poop? I have no idea. But what's really cool with alpacas is they all poop in the same pile. So they have a common dung pile. I don't know. I've never been asked how much they poop.
Probably just as much as any other.
Yeah. And how fast can they run? They can go pretty fast when they want to.
So, how do you calculate how much food your alpaca needs in a day, or how much, like in terms of pounds or grams, do they eat in a day?
That's a great question. So calculate for mine is approximately 3 pounds of hay per day per head. And then I usually give them about a cup per head of the mineral ration and grain that I was talking about earlier. Excuse me.
Here. All right. In your opinion, would alpacas make good therapy animals because of their temperament?
Great therapy animals. Yeah, they're really quiet. As you can tell, they don't make a lot of noise, and they can be trained. Like, they will go anywhere. They can tolerate a lot.
All right. Does an alpaca sleep standing up like a flamingo, or do they lay down?
So they actually lay down, and the way they lay down is called cushing. So if you watch them lay down, they kind of go down on their back legs, and then they put their front legs underneath them, and they look like they're just a little bundle.
They tuck up all in tight.
They do.
So we have another question. If somebody wanted to join 4-H, is there an option to bring in an alpaca as your animal in 4-H at this time? Do you know?
You know what? There's not a 4-H project right now. We've done some 4-H with some multiple class my children when they were a little younger did, but we kind of had to create the program. We had to create the program and go from that.
For sure. All right, now somebody wants to know, what are the tells of an alpaca if they're upset, angry, sad, or mad?
That's a great question. Their ears will lay right back. They will come right back, and they put their head up in the air, and just the way they carry themselves, it lets us know that they're pretty pissed. They're pretty mad.
Yeah, so their ears come right back, and you can tell, ooh, this one is not too happy.
He's a little irritated.
Yeah, lots of noises around here. One class from Henry Braun wants to know if the alpaca's coat is warm enough to keep them warm in the winter months in Saskatchewan.
It is actually, because it continues to grow. So by April, they will have like a coat that's 5 to 6 inches long. So they're really well adapted and really well suited for our environment.
Another class says, hi from Lumsden, thanks for sharing. Are there any foods that are harmful to an alpaca?
Foods? Oh gosh, I don't know.
Anything cause them to bloat if you fed them too much? I guess too much grain is not.
Too much grain, probably. I don't feed a lot of grain. I've never thought of that before. I guess there's certain kinds of clovers that can cause some issues, but I know mine at home love pumpkin.
So the fall is a great time.
They love pumpkin, yeah.
Okay, how high can an alpaca jump? Have you ever seen one jump?
Well, they'll get up. Actually, we had one at the show this week, jumped over these pens.
So that's like
probably
4
feet, yeah. He got up and over.
All right, now how do you tell if your alpaca is sick? Is their ears the indicator for that as well, or how would you tell if your animal needs treatment for something?
You know, they're really stoic, and by the time you can tell that they're sick or there's something wrong, generally they're really sick. So you have, it's a lot of it is feeling them. We can tell by their body condition. So doing regular herd health and handling the alpacas is a really good indication. A lot of times too, their eyes will tell us, you get to know it's just like your dog, right? Like your cat. You get used to and you get to know what they look like, happy and healthy. And then when they get a look that, they just look sad, they're not feeling well.
Yeah. In different cultures or different areas of the world, do people eat the meat of an alpaca?
They do. So it actually is a main protein source for a lot of people in Peru and in South America. It's a great meat, actually. It's really low in cholesterol. It's very healthy for you. There's hardly any fat in it.
I know we were chatting about this yesterday. Do alpacas get along with horses or cows? Are they kept together, or do they need to be separated and stay with their own kind?
So I don't keep my alpacas with other animals. It's not advised to do that because there is some diseases that other animals can pass to alpacas. So you kind of want to keep them by themselves.
How long does it take you to halter break an alpaca? Do you start as soon as they're born, like quote unquote taming them, or what's your process?
I generally try and get a halter on them as early as I can, if not just to have the halter on them. And every animal is different, just like a cow, just like a horse, just like anything that you're halter training. It just takes time. Everyone is different, but it can be usually by the third time they're on the halter, they're willing to come along.
Yeah, can be pretty stubborn. We have a class asking, do you clean their fur? Do they need baths? How do you keep them clean? Do you brush their hair, comb their hair?
Okay, so we don't actually really do much with them. We don't brush them or comb them because it actually takes the crimp out of their fiber, which is what we kind of want in their fiber. They clean themselves by rolling in dirt, in the dust. So every spring, in the spring and summer, they like to roll and roll and roll in the dust, and that's what keeps them clean. But we don't do anything, so it's kind of nice that way. They are what they are.
Great way to put it. Typically, when the alpacas have babies, do they stay in a family group? Like, will the cria stay close to the mom, or is the father around?
No, dad's nowhere in the picture. But yeah, they stay with mom, and they actually, what's really cool about them is they remember their family. So you can take a female cria and send her away. Like I had one, she went off to go get bread at another farm and was gone for 4 months, and she came home and she's been hanging out with her mom again. And so they do recognize their family, and they like to stay with their family.
That is so sweet. Okay. When you are taking alpacas, to shows, how do you transport them? Do you just keep them, is it a special trailer for them?
No, I just put them I have a horse trailer that I pull. Some people actually, and this is true, will transport them in the back of their truck, like in the back of their truck or in a minivan. Like you can put.
I think I've seen that a time or two.
Yeah, they actually will transport them in the back of a minivan. I take them in a trailer. What's really nice is when they're moving, once you start moving, they actually cush. They lay down, so they stay down for the whole entire trip once they're moving.
Nice. Okay, from a grade 4 science class, are alpacas herbivores, carnivores, or omnivores? Herbivores, so they eat lots and lots of plants. So what kind of diseases or illnesses is an alpaca typical to fall lame to or become lame because of?
Not a whole lot. I haven't run into a lot of, they can get M-worm. But that's more of a parasite infection. I don't know. I haven't really had any sick animals.
On your vaccinations and your herd health.
Yeah, you're not going to have a lot of issues.
So we have another question as well here from Henry Braun. So a cow moos, a horse neighs. What does an alpaca do? What's their noise?
They typically hum.
They hum.
They hum. But they have some other vocalizations too that are kind of unique. But typically to communicate with each other, they hum.
Another question here. So you said that the males were separated. Are they castrated? And if so or if not, do they fight with each other? Like, will the males fight amongst each other or the females fight amongst each other?
Males will fight amongst themselves to kind of develop a hierarchy. So they have a dominant male and they have like a pecking order. We can castrate them at about 1.5 years old, and the castrated males can stay with the females.
Okay. All right, well, we would like to thank everybody for their questions. I'm going to open it up to Glenda for any last words, last comments, any thoughts to send these kids with?
I don't know. If you have the opportunity to go have an alpaca come visit your school, or you have the opportunity to go visit an alpaca farm, I would do it. They're really great animals, as you can tell. They're really personable. I just want to say thank you for listening, because it's really great. I love talking about my alpacas.
thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to the classes for all of the great questions. And classes, I would encourage you to bug your teachers and your staff and your principals to let you have some animals in your school, whether it's an alpaca or a calf or a goat, any kind of livestock. Thank you for your time, and we will send everybody off with a nice exhibition wave. See